What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Vine and Branches podcast. Hopefully you're having a good day. If not, hopefully we can make it a little bit better. Today, we got our special guest, Elijah Neal, who's my brother, my wonderful older brother, who's also a absolute genius and stud in the math
I wouldn't say
world.
That,
He is. Anyways, we're going to be doing our verse by verse through John, and we're going to be reading chapter 18 today. If anybody wants to flip there and follow along, you can. We're going to be starting with verse 1. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples across the brook Kidron, where there was a garden which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, having procured a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" And they answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. So he asked them again, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go." This was so fulfill the word that he had spoken. "Of those whom you gave me, I have lost not one." Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. So Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me?" So the band of soldiers and their captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. First they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Is that how you pronounce that? Do y'all know?
Let me see it.
Elijah would know how to pronounce some of these words.
I would say Caiaphas.
Caiaphas.
Oh,
That sounded pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
Maybe
we're gonna go with that.
Maybe we should pause there for a second.
Okay.
That was a lot. So, the first verse said, after he had spoken these words, which is for some context. What was that referring to?
What was it referring to?
Mm-hmm.
I believe I wasn't here because I was in Alaska. So it was Caleb and it was Caleb and Bryce Halleck that read these last chapters, but I assume it's referring to recently he had just talked to the disciples at the feast, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
So he was at the feast, and this is when he gave Judas the bread, and then he did the whole communion thing and showed us how to do communion, and told Peter he was going to deny him, and he's kind of preparing the end of his life. He's like,
final speech.
yeah,
okay.
It's like this is what's about to happen, and so then they go out there, and the people follow him because Judas has already departed because he said, "Now go, hurry," and
Judas departs, then Jesus talks, and it says after he said these things, then Judas.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah. So I think.
yeah, that's what's going on.
Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him. That's an interesting
idea.
He already knew what was going to happen. He knew that's kind of an interesting when you think about how he knew what was going to happen. He knew the suffering he was going to have to go through, and he still, went through with it and stuck it out,
So I don't know how much theology you've kind of dug into about this, but would you say that the pain that Jesus is about to experience
is, do you think that the pain was greater like spiritually, or do you think it was greater physically?
I'm inclined to say spiritually.
I think so too.
Yeah. I mean, when we go a little bit further, when he actually, once he is crucified, he endures the wrath of God, the wrath of God, which is crazy to think about. Which we're not quite there yet. So, but yeah, I would be inclined to say spiritually. Yeah.
Well, I just think of Jesus being this innocent Lamb of God that hasn't done anything wrong, has never hurt a fly, and now he's having to deal with the weight of sin, and he's never dealt with sin before in his life.
Yeah.
He wasn't born into this identity of sin. He was born of a virgin. He was born of the Spirit of God, and so now he's experiencing this sin thing that he's never experienced before, and he's never really earned the right to experience. I mean, like, per se.
Right.
And so now he's faced with every sin that every human being on the earth ever has or will commit, past, present, and future, and he's dealing with this in his heart. And then I just kind of get to see Jesus' heart when we read later about the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah.
About him just like sweating blood, because it's like, how do you deal with that as a human being? I mean, obviously we can't picture it because we're not perfect beings, but to go through something where I didn't deserve this, yet I'm taking all of this pain, this suffering, and I'm taking it with me, even though I've never done any of it.
Yeah.
It's just like, to me, I don't think that there's a greater pain. And then to know that the person that had your back the whole time, God the Father, has had your back the whole time. You've been speaking to him. That's the only reason that you were departing from the crowds.
Yeah.
The only person that's had your back this entire time and loved you perfectly turns his back on you. It's your lowest moment. Like, how does that... I can't imagine how that takes a toll on Jesus.
For sure. Yeah. And it's kind of hard to imagine the spiritual pain being worse than, I mean, arguably probably one of the most gruesome deaths you could
Imagine.
experience. Yeah, I mean, and yet the spiritual pain is worse than that. That's pretty
mind-boggling to think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then
I definitely think it was probably worse, because the way I look at it, I would say that God's wrath has to be worse than man's. Like, his has to be worse. So when we look at man's, like, just the way they're absolutely beating him, right? I think God's wrath would be worse.
Yeah.
So I have a question about God's wrath that I wanted to ask y'all. How would y'all, because there are obviously people out there that would be like, well, how is he a loving God and also have this wrath, right? So how would y'all debate that or answer questions asked about that?
So your question is like, how does a loving God also have judgment and wrath on people? Well, I mean, I think that, first of all, when I think of God overall, and I think of just his character and how we don't deserve a thing. I mean, as soon as there was sin entered into the heart of Eve and Adam, should have been, demolished and not have ever been a thought of God again. Yet now he still thinks about each one of us more than there are grains of sand on the earth. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, So I've wronged this person, yet they still pursue me in one of the greatest ways that we've ever seen love displayed. It is the greatest way. And it's the only love that has ever been actually perfect. It's the only love that has had no flaw, truly. And so I look at this and I'm like, okay, there's evidence of love. And then you get to the wrath part of it, and I got to think to myself, okay, he's so loving and he still cares about me. But just like a parent would care about me, there's like rules, and how he's going to discipline me. He's going to give me consequences for things that I've done and things that I go against that are his rules. And so ultimately, I think I just look at it from a perspective of, I don't deserve his grace anyways. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to have breath in my lungs, but here I am because he loves me.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's my job to cultivate a relationship with him and to serve him with everything that I have, to lay down my life, to pick up my own cross and to carry it. And then it can be kind of prideful, I think, for us to sit here on the other side of his grace and then say, oh, you're a loving God, but you're also wrathful God because you discipline me, or you make this tough on me, or you say that this is wrong. And it's like, well, no, I actually don't deserve any of it at all. Like, I don't deserve to be here in the first place. And so when you look at it from a perspective of I don't deserve it, then it's kind of like, okay, well, now I'm just getting what I deserve from a place of wrath. Like, I deserve the wrath anyways. So does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would say in terms of why is God wrathful, the best way I can think to explain it is to just tie it to maybe parenting. Like, when you think about if your child does something that's wrong, or even take it outside of parenting and just kind of in general, when there's injustice, like somebody does something wrong to hurt somebody else, that anger, a lot of I would think that for most people that would make them angry. And this the same way with God. When we do something wrong, when we wrong somebody else, or wrong him, or we disobey him, I mean, that would make him angry, just as the same sort of things would make us angry. The difference being that God is perfect and he doesn't lash out in anger. He just his anger is righteous, and so it's not sinful, and he is the judge, and so he can rightfully deal punishment for our sins. So that's kind of what I would say. I mean, I think anger is and wrath is an emotion that even that God has given us. I don't know. Well, given us, we have that emotion because He has.
We
emotion.
inherit His.
Right, and so in the same way that we are angry when there's injustice, so is He.
Mm-hmm. And one thing. Oh, good.
So I wanted to kind of bounce off of that with like the morality thing. If somebody, we can say that God is loving and that he shouldn't, have wrath on anybody. But to say that is to say that if somebody wronged me, if somebody sinned against me, and then God just goes and forgives them, like, yes, that's what God does. But in the same way, like, I feel like it's kind of like, you love them, but do you love me because you don't do anything to them? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of like this twisted thing. Like if somebody wronged me and God just freely forgave him, then there was no punishment for it, and God just lavishes them in love, but doesn't like do anything about it, then to me it's like, well, yeah, you love them, but now do you love me? Because I've just been wrong. Do you care about how I feel? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking as you said that.
Yeah.
And what I think when I think about this idea is that if he didn't, it wouldn't be fair and just. And that it's not because he doesn't love us. In fact, in some ways, I believe it breaks his heart to send people to hell and
Yeah.
to show wrath.
I would
Because
agree.
it says he wishes none should perish, but all have everlasting life.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he does it because he likes to do it. I think he does it because he needs to do it to show the fairness and just God that he is as a judge, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's why he does it.
Well, and then one more thing before we keep reading that's just stuck out to me is verse 11 when Jesus is talking to Peter, and he says, "Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me?" He knows the cup that he has been given, and he knows the power and authority of God the Father, and he's like, am I just going to not do that? Am I just going to disobey God like that? Like, this is what I have to do. And that kind of courage is kind of is inspiring, I would say.
Oh, yeah, definitely to even follow our earthly father or authority in like a job with our boss or things like that. When somebody tells you to do something, to follow it.
Yeah.
And I even look at it as he's saying, God has put this cup in my hand. Why would I not, go through with it?
Yeah.
But we see him in the Garden of Gethsemane also say, take this cup from me.
Yeah.
Like, if there's any other way, take this cup from me.
Yeah.
And so he knows the cards he's been dealt.
Yeah.
And so now he's saying, okay, I gotta follow through with it, because he knows the cost. He knows. And something that also just like kind of blows my mind is he knows the pain that he's about to experience spiritually, physically, mentally, whatever. He knows all of it. And then as we read in Hebrews, it was the joy that was set before him that kept him on the cross. That was the joy that set before him that kept him motivated.
Yeah.
Like, it was a joy for him to endure that so that we could be with him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't deserve that. How are you going to endure the worst punishment physically, spiritually, and mentally that anybody has ever experienced, and yet you're going to do it with a joy in your heart because you love somebody enough to endure it for them?
Yeah.
Like, that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, what was the name? How did you pronounce the name?
Oh, I think it's Caiaphas.
Caiaphas. Okay. See, when I read that, that's not how I would say it, but that sounds more right than what I would say. Okay. So, it was Caiaphas who had advised, this is verse 14, by the way. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews that it would be expedient that one man should die for the people. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he entered with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter stood outside at the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the servant girl who had kept watch at the door and brought Peter in. The servant girl at the door said to Peter, "You also are not one of the man's disciples, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now the servants and officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teachings. Jesus answered him, "I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know what I said." When he had said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, "Is that how you answer the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me?" Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas. How did you say it? Caiaphas. I don't.
Caiaphas, yeah.
I don't have a natural want to say a K. Caiaphas, the high priest. Do y'all want to stop there? Sure.
Was
Stop right there.
Yeah, was there something that stuck out to you?
The first thing that stuck out to me reading that was when they asked him what he has said, and Jesus goes, "Go ask all these people that have listened to me say it. They'll know what I've said." And it, I can see why the dude then goes and strikes him and is like, "Is this how you're gonna answer?" I can almost see the way he's answering him in this way of, "Do you not see the evidence of what I'm doing?" And not just the evidence that they're listening, but he's trying to also get at the point of the fruit of my labor shows what I'm doing is true, right?
Yeah.
And you're not gonna listen to that. So he's kind of almost putting the evidence in front of him and going, look at the fruit of my labor.
Yeah.
So that's what stuck out to me.
Yeah, I would agree. It is very interesting to see the way he's just like, yeah, go talk to everybody else. I mean, they'll vouch for me, kind of a thing.
Me and Gabe have already kind of talked about what we think about Peter denying Jesus, but I kind of want to hear what you think about it and like what kind of sticks out to you when you read the passage of Peter denying Jesus 3 times.
Is that what we're about to read? Is that what's next?
I believe we read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've read it.
Oh right. Yeah.
But it's gonna. He's about to deny
him again. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's. It's a tough one. I think that when faced with that kind of persecution, and when for Peter in this case, saying that I think in his mind, saying that he was a friend of Jesus would have gotten him into trouble, right? And so it's kind of convicting to have somebody like Peter, who is so close to Jesus, deny him in that way, and to realize that I'd like to think that if I was in that position that I wouldn't deny Jesus, but to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know if I would. It's very real possibility that I would deny Jesus if I was faced with that kind of persecution. It's tough.
We were saying, because we read about him prophesying that Jesus was telling him basically, like, you say that you're going to lay your life down for me, but really you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows.
Yeah.
And so what we were saying about that is, like, Gabe was talking about how a lot of times when we sin and we forget what God says, like when we're sinning.
Yeah.
Because, like, Jesus sits here and warns him and goes, you're going to deny me. And then me and Gabe are sitting here like, well, if Jesus is telling me that, then I'm going to be a little bit more cautious about what I'm doing, you know? And you would think it would be at the front of his mind because it's the evening before.
Yeah.
And so you would think you'd be a little bit more cautious, but no, he denies him 3 times. And then when he goes on the third one, then we'll find out. He remembers. He's like, oh no,
Yeah.
what have I done? You
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one.
I think the idea of whether we or me, whether I would deny him in that same situation is a tough question to answer. To think about it. Like, would I have the faith? I do think it's possible to have the faith.
Yeah.
There are obviously people that were out there that did. So it's not impossible, but it is very challenging.
For sure.
And it shows that even he, denied him 3 times in a row after Jesus told him he was going to do it. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
I would think in that situation I wouldn't, but it is a interesting question to look at and go, but would you?
Yeah.
So
to me, it's kind of the same question as if like somebody were, God forbid, to walk into a building that I'm in with a gun, and then to go ahead and say like, okay, y'all have to denounce Jesus as God, or I'm gonna shoot you.
Right.
And it's like, well, I'm sitting here without the gun pointed at my head, going,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
of course, like,
Obviously.
yeah, I'm gonna
stand
stick up for
yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm a, big guy of faith.
Right.
I'm gonna do
Naturally.
whatever." And then I sit here and I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
like would I, if I was faced with death or something like that, would I do that or not?
And I think that's kind of where your priorities show real quick.
Yeah.
Of like, do you love your life or do you love me?
Yep.
I mean, and like I really don't know what I would do in the situation. It's hard to really try to grasp it.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of the same thing of like, if I was a Jew back in World War II.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I wouldn't hate the Nazis. I would love them because they're my neighbor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I really don't know.
I don't know.
Because that's tough.
That's tough.
Like that's hard.
Yeah.
And then there's a big reason why like a lot of those people were like hating God because of it. And it's like, oh, I wouldn't do the same thing. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I really don't.
Yeah.
And so it's really I like to kind of put myself in that mindset of like just like what would I do?
Yeah.
But a lot of times you really don't know.
Yeah.
And then I think of like people who are in underground churches or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they're constantly faced with that, but yet they choose to. And then I sit here and I go, well, me sitting here in America, I don't even have an ounce of the faith that they do
Yeah.
to be able to do that and to put your life on the line every single day.
Yeah.
And to show up to these underground churches that if you get found out, you're dead.
Yeah.
It's like, that's so, it's kind of encouraging to me. It's like, well, if they can do it, then I need to build my faith up to a point where it's like, I could care less about life,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So now we're about to read in verse 25 about Peter denying him again. So we already
Okay.
read that he's denied him once. So we're going to read him denying him again and again. So verse 25, now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. So they said to him, you also are not one of his disciples, are you? And he denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, did I not see you in the garden with him? And Peter again denied it. And at once a rooster crowed. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters, so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. Take him yourself and judge him by your own law. The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken, to show by what kind of death he was going to die. That's crazy. That's bonkers to me. Number one is that the people are like, "Oh, if he hadn't done anything wrong, we wouldn't be doing it." But wait a minute. He hasn't done anything wrong.
Nope.
They're lying. Okay, number two is they're so eager to put him to death that when Pilate goes, oh, because obviously we know Pilate is part of the Romans. Okay, the Romans would put people to death, and the Jews, it's against the law to put people to death, right? For that.
Mhm.
And so they're like, judge this man. And Pilate goes, do it by your own law. And they go, but we can't put people to death by our own law. They're so eager to put him to death that they're wanting the Romans to
They go to the
judge
Romans
him.
for help, even though the Romans are not exactly friends with.
No, they
with
hate
the
each
Jews.
other.
They hate each other, but they're like, but we don't like this guy, so we're gonna go to these people that are our enemies, so that we can get this guy killed.
What's interesting to me is what you're talking about, how they were saying that, well, if he had done anything wrong, then we wouldn't come to you or whatever. And then he's saying, okay, go judge him by your own law. And the Jews are like, okay, but we can't do it by our own law. But what's interesting is they try to pin him for blasphemy the entire time he's alive.
Yeah.
As they try to pin him for blasphemy and stone him. And so, to me, it's like, you're going to say that he hasn't done anything wrong, but if he had done something wrong, you would have stoned him already. And so, they just kind of contradict themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's like, yeah, we can put people to death, but we haven't found anything to put him to death for. Like, we've already tried.
Yeah.
And it's failed. And so now they're sitting here and they're like, well, you're our last option because we can't get this dude to mess up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me when I consider how we look at the Jews, and we're like, or I guess I should say we look at the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and whatnot, and it's like they know this text like the back of their hand, and yet, even though all of these prophecies, the fulfillment of all these prophecies was right in front of their face, they couldn't see it. And yet, it was necessary for them, them not seeing it was what ultimately fulfilled the prophecy and allowed Jesus to die, right? So it's kind of a weird thing going on there. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And when I look in this, you like to picture the Romans as the bad guys, right? And the Jews as the good guys. But right here, Pilate is like not wanting to kill him, and the Jews are like, "No,
He's like,
please
I don't know,
kill
man.
this dude for me."
I don't like he hadn't done anything wrong.
And
you know, like,
so you start to see, wait a minute, it's not divided onto cultures. It's mankind is evil.
yeah,
Good guy's Jesus, obviously.
yeah.
So, anyways, verse 33. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done?" And Jesus answered him, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting, that I might be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world." Then Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? And they cried out again, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. That is the end of chapter 18. Shout out the song "I Am Barabbas" by Josiah Queen. That's that's a great song.
There's also the footnote says, or an insurrectionist.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
An insurrection would be like, how do you explain it? It's kind of like disobedient, like civil disobedience, and not civil disobedience, disobedience to the law. Let's just look up the definition.
Let's do so.
While he's looking that up, I want to talk about the fact that this Pilate, number one, he says, Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" What an interesting question.
Yeah, he says those because Jesus says, everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice, and he could, like, I would have expected a question more like, what is the truth, right? Like what is this truth that you're talking about? But he just asks, what is truth in general? Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a very interesting question, but it's also a good question.
Yeah.
To look into. And I also love the fact that he's like, I find no guilt in this man.
Yeah.
There's no guilt. He did nothing wrong, right? So, yeah. Anyways, what does the definition say?
So insurrection is an act or instance of rising in revolt, rebellion, or resistance against civil authority or an established government.
So dude was just like
a rabble rouser.
He was a rebel.
Yes, indeed.
And I don't know where I've heard this, but he was not a very good dude. I mean, I've heard that he was like a rapist, and I don't know where I got that from.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if any of the other Gospels speak to Barabbas's crimes more specifically. Yeah. I don't know. But
may be making
the point still stands. They wanted this guy who's not a very good guy. He was doing a lot of probably not very nice things. It says robber, insurrection, all of these things. They're like, yeah, we want him and not this guy who really just ticked us off. He hasn't really like done anything wrong, but he made us mad. So we're going to release this robber instead. Like, kind of crazy.
So I got 2 points from this. One, you were talking about like what is truth, and then I go back to where he says, "I am the truth, I way, the truth, and the life." And before that, he says, "Go talk to the people about what I've said." And so, just in me, it's just like, he's kind of giving Pilate the same answer of like, "Well, go find out for yourself." I mean, like, you've heard the things that I've said through these people, like. And so what I also think is interesting is that, I don't know if it says it in this one, but in another gospel it says that Pilate washes his hands after he's done.
He's kind of like, I don't want any part of this.
This dude's blood is not on my hands, basically. And I think that's super interesting that Pilate had the choice to say, I mean, because obviously he was an authority. He had the choice to say, this dude has done nothing wrong, we're going to release him.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
And
then he makes a compromise in his head. He goes, but it's Passover and we release a prisoner for y'all every time. And so he's making a compromise, and he's like, okay, do you want this guy or you want Barabbas? And then obviously they choose Barabbas. Second point, and I kind of led myself up to this. When we think of sides here, Jesus obviously is the kingdom. And obviously, this is the fate that Jesus had to make. The other side is the Jews, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, all of the people of the world. The Romans, everybody was against Jesus. And I look at them and I say, Okay, what is the difference? All the people of the world are in the world, they're of the world, so they are of sin. Jesus of no sin. And so what I see here is I see when they're choosing between Barabbas or Jesus, they're looking and they're saying, who identifies with me more? And they look at them side by side and they're like, okay, this Jesus guy, he's not like us because he's not of the world. He's not of this world, and so he's not like me. And then they look at the Barabbas and they're like, yeah, this dude's a terrible guy, but so am I. Like, and he's of the world. And so the world is just basically choosing itself over Jesus. And so it kind of ties me back into where Jesus is talking about, if you love me, then the world's going to hate you because it hated me first. And it's like, if you're of the world would love you. And that's why. Is because Barabbas, he was a terrible guy, but yet the world loved him and they wanted him over Jesus, which was ultimately the sacrifice for everybody of the world.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting, I thought.
Yeah.
When
for sure.
When that got dropped on me.
Yeah.
Dude, those were some bars right there, bro. Bars. Yeah. Anyways, that was really good. Do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I think that's all I got. That was good.
Nothing? Okay. Well, thanks for joining us for chapter 18. Come back to your chapter 19.